Oh my God, what am I doing? Hello everybody, good morning. My name is Desi-Rae. Welcome to my channel, Just Thinking Out Loud. I hope that you are doing well. This is the third of what I thought was going to be a two-part series, and it's a continuation, a direct continuation, but it was long, so I decided to cut it short. I was talking about why we should be skeptical of the data that we get. I was at my fourth point. My fourth point is that it allows people to ignore what is going on in front of their eyes. Moving away from statistical analyses, but continuing on the idea that data is used to make persons see the world as unfair, the breaking up of people into groups ignores the complexity of the world. It shows individuals as having their group characteristics, but yet there are differences between the group right down to the individual. The data is talking about groups, but persons generally use it to inform their personal world when interacting with those individuals. For me, personally, I was and am skeptical of a lot of what I hear because I didn't come to the same conclusions that other people came to. I did not think a certain way and get that feedback from my own experience. And I think if things were true, then I would have been able to suss out a lot of things like feeling discriminated against or hated, especially because I was sort of surrounded in a community where it was the majority of the group that is supposedly so bad in being oppressive. They were just too nice to me, and I'm sure that I've walked among prejudiced people, but I think if I didn't want to do that, I would simply have to go off myself because I think they exist everywhere. It's not until other people started telling me how things were, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to just believe it. I'm going to go and read about it and find out about it. I think that you should try and make things better and make people be nicer, basically, towards other human beings, but that's not necessary for a lot of the things that people say that they want to change. The media is constantly telling persons to not have their own sense of agency and personal responsibility. It wears down the moral compass by promoting envy and jealousy, while it may also be ignoring the presence of real pain due to wanting to succeed in life and not being able to, or living and growing up in broken families. And still further, it presents a case of futility and then incites rage against persons who are doing better off. Envy or jealousy or wanting status that others have can be great motivators. Not that I'm advocating for those things, but when it turns into hatred that is then justified by allowing persons to believe that it is righteous retaliation, it promotes first the mental and then maybe otherwise attack on persons who may be innocent. And it attaches negative traits to persons who may not be deserving of it because they don't actually possess those characteristics. And then there's the ignoring of the presence of the same traits within the groups that are so-called righteous, that being bias and discrimination and prejudice. All in all, even if all this were true, that a specific group or specific groups are being targeted by discriminatory practices, despite the lack of proof, it does not matter in terms of advancement. Groups have succeeded in the past in spite of these things. It does not stop persons from focusing on their own problems rather than shouting at others to be more fair. And I'll say it again, if persons do not care, you would not have a voice. And if persons do not care, it is nonsensical to go and ask them for help. And in the long term, deprives a group from developing competence and independence instead of always getting help from others. And this leads to my biggest point. What can be done? For one, stop sowing resentment between groups. The focus on inequality in terms of oppression ignores the avenues that others have taken to move up the income ladder. The path to less inequality is not through politics, at least historically. The path to less inequality is the development of the same skills within different groups. But this is something that often comes from personal incentive. I did mention this before, that economic prosperity often comes before the lessening of discrimination, and I don't think you should count on the lessening of discrimination ever happening. Persons can go for an international perspective and look at empirical studies of multi-ethnic societies and see that there are groups who do well even in the face of discrimination, and groups who do well no matter where they go in the world because they major in certain things and they provide services that the public needs. One might ask the question, how do people go about getting work experience and skills that would allow them to compete effectively in the market? For one, the welfare state or government redistribution, or rather distribution programs of wealth, remove the incentive for persons to gain the skills and work experience that they need. It is also helping to destroy the family unit. I say helping because I do think that individuals have a choice in this, although it is very hard to not respond to incentives. People who are better off coming from two-person households that value education, things that helps them get where they are, somehow think that others can succeed, ignoring the very things that have helped them. Specific ways to help persons gain the skills they need is to leave the economy alone. Remove minimum wage laws, especially, and maybe labor unions, because they stop persons from getting the work that would help them get the skills that they need, and these were avenues that were available to other groups, and their options have been reduced in terms of building their human capital. In terms of people's potential to achieve competence due to things such as IQ differences that we may be seeing play out in society, I think the only thing we can hope for is to assume potential and to create the environment for that potential to come out if it can be done. But this has to be considered when talking about differences. These kinds of things need to be considered if persons are serious about understanding the problem, for one, but then also trying to solve it. The fact that this is something that has been established but is not very often discussed when talking about group outcomes is amazing to me. I didn't really know anything about this before like half a year ago, almost a year now. Whether or not IQ differences can change over time due to social environments such as culture or the adaptation in a new environment, it is how it is in the present, and it is crucial to the discussion at hand. And I totally get why persons don't want to bring it up, because it does promote prejudice among those who don't fully understand what it says. But when you start blaming groups and picking up for specific groups due to different outcomes, it becomes very relevant. Those who continue to use it in the name of good, the data, and pushing the narrative of oppression need to realize that they are also opening the floodgates of evil. No one is responsible for the actions of other people, but saying that they are trying to help reduce inequality by pointing out the differences between groups everywhere is possibly a game that can be played forever and ever, and they will always be able to be the ones to help others and then gain their dependence on them and support for helping them do things that they could have probably helped themselves with anyway. It's a social and a moral issue, that being discrimination, but pitting groups against each other does not help, and it allows people to have preformed ideas in their heads before they even interact with other people. For something like IQ, I don't know. The best bet is to try and provide a better home environment. Also focus on things like health that may be negatively impacting intelligence. And as IQ is something that is selected for, constantly removing incentives to compete in the marketplace through welfare is not helping. It is just ensuring that persons adapt to a state of dependency and lower expectations. I'll say again that I think help should be given through charity, not through force through the state, and persons can focus on helping others in emergency situations and things that cannot be foreseen, or to help people reach a certain goal, such as gaining job skills on their path towards a better future, which the welfare system cannot discriminate for. Focus on savings, even out of small incomes, and long-term thinking, and also entrepreneurship. These are things that other groups have used to succeed all around the world. Home ownership is also important, but this involves long-term thinking. And even if you have a certain income, you might not do the same thing that another person would do with it, because you are not thinking in the same, you don't have the same goals, basically, and you may be thinking short-term and not long-term in terms of the accumulation of wealth over time. College education is also important, but the kind of major that you choose is important, and the quality of education that you get is important. Again, stop just trying to give people things without the foundation that brings these things around. Trying to mandate giving underperforming groups better access to housing by forcing the end product rather than focusing on things such as building better credit is not helping. Affirmative action also is not helping for the same reason of lowering expectations and making sure that other groups work harder and get better in their competence. I also saw an article recently on how persons with Section 8 vouchers, I don't really understand the history of it, but that they were basically now able to choose between living in luxury apartments versus going out and working. That is a cruel decision to give someone to make. So those are just some suggestions. Of course, I don't know everything, but I do think what I'm saying is sound, and I actually am pretty confident that it is. The most important thing is to stop sowing resentment between people. In such a place of abundance, opportunity, in my opinion, having been very close to poverty, I will not say that I was poor. In American terms, I was. But this is a place of opportunity, and people keep trying to take away those things that made it that place, instead of focusing on paths that others have used. That's it. That concludes my mini series. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. I'm sure you're going to have counter arguments, but please actually argue on what I said and not what you think I said, which is often the case, and your impressions of what I said. And if you have any more, I guess advice or other things that you have thought about, then let me know. Have a great day. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and leave comments. Let me know what you think. Goodbye. Bye. In terms of the potential to achieve competence in things like IQ, differences that we may be seeing. What? This doesn't make any sense.